Now, obviously, it's insane to just throw 6 leopard geckos into the same enclosure, right? This video will be a bit different. So if last week there was a whole kerfuffle about keeping leopard geckos together. Now you guys know, if you watch the channel, I've been keeping leopard geckos together for 15 years. I've had 0 issues, no stress incidents, no tails missing, no loss of limbs or eyes, no revolts, no gangs formed in the enclosures, nothing like that. Does this mean that everyone should keep leopard geckos together? Absolutely not. And did I make a mistake 2 full weeks ago when I made a video? Yes, I did. The mistake was I didn't explain things well enough, and that is my fault. So, a very brief backstory. This is a beautiful leopard gecko, by the way, that was produced last year. She does live by herself because I do keep some leopard geckos by themselves, and I keep some in colonies. And the reason that I keep them in colonies is because that's how they live in the wild. So 2 weeks ago, I made a video about putting a bunch of leopard geckos into an enclosure. Now, obviously, putting a bunch of leopard geckos into an enclosure on its face sounds terrible. And the way the information was presented on the internet for people who did not watch the video was something like this. He threw 6 random leopard geckos into an enclosure that was way too small with no hides and no water. Well, this is not true at all. This is the enclosure, and the video is right here in the corner if you want to watch the whole thing and see for yourself exactly how it was presented. This is an enclosure that is 120 gallons. It has 6 leopard geckos in it. It has 11 dedicated hides, never mind the fact that geckos hide together in the wild. That's how they do it. It has 4 under-tank heat spots in different areas, and it has a basking spot that not only creates a basking platform on top of these bricks, but the bricks have 3 different layers, and therefore it transmits the heat at various temperatures throughout. There's 4 different standing water pools, and it has a misting system that goes off and at night creates a dew just like you'd find in the wild. Some of the hides are humid hides, some of them are dry, and all of the parameters are exactly the way that they are in the care guide that I put out years ago and had 0 flack from. Furthermore, this video had almost 20,000 views and 99.1% thumbs up rating, which you can see in the back end of YouTube, by the way. And then 2 full weeks later, someone made a TikTok saying that they don't agree with my care practices, which is not new. People have varying care practices, and just because someone says this and someone says that doesn't mean one is totally wrong and the other one is totally right. Often there's a lot in the middle. And then because of that, someone with a bit of a platform talked about the video, and then I started to get backlash. Before that, I got 0 negative comments, not 1. Now with that said, no hate towards anybody who made the video, who made the post. It is what it is. I don't really care. The point of the video is to actually question, where do we get care standards and practices in the first place? And we'll use leopard geckos as the example because that's the example in this case. Why do we think that leopard geckos are solitary creatures? Because guess what? They aren't. They never have been, and they never will be. And if you're looking, okay, Adam, where's your peer-reviewed source? I was very lucky when I first started keeping leopard geckos to run into somebody from Pakistan who worked in the field of actually exporting these animals. Now, I know most leopard geckos aren't actually exported from Pakistan, it's different parts of the Middle East, but these are where the contacts that I know are from. And even at the last Reptile Expo in Toronto, I met someone from Pakistan who was telling me about, yeah, of course they live in groups. You find them in people's walls and under their patios in dozens and dozens. Well, of course, the argument is going to be, yeah, Adam, even if you find them in the wild like this, you wouldn't keep them in like this in captivity because they have vast areas to roam. They can get away from each other. And you're absolutely right. You should never keep a ball python in a tiny, tiny enclosure because they're found in a termite mound and someone's anecdote is that. But think about it. If leopard geckos always, every single time, are found in groups in the wild, which is true, by the way, and I'll explain why I know this in just a second, why wouldn't you keep them together in captivity? We do it with garter snakes, we do it with sand geckos, we do it with all sorts of different things. Of course, you do it correctly. You don't keep males together because males will fight over territory. Males will fight just for the sake of fighting because males don't want to be with males, but females don't do that. Why do female leopard geckos fight? Female leopard geckos fight because of resources. They don't have the right hiding spot, they don't feel comfortable, they don't have enough food, they don't have enough water. But in nature, animals who aren't inherently territorial don't fight each other for the sake of fighting. That's not a thing. Because in nature, there's no hospitals. If an animal fights another animal and that animal gets hurt, guess what? It's likely going to die. So the argument, well, they have room to move in the wild. That's so true. And what are they moving for? They're moving to go find water, food, and mates. So obviously we know there is nothing wrong with keeping female leopard geckos without males. I mean, most of us would prefer that. So we can get rid of the they're looking around for mates thing. Looking around for food and water. In the wild, if you had a colony, let's suppose you had a crawl space of a house, a little tiny corner of a crawl space of a house with tons of leopard geckos, which is how you find them in Pakistan and other parts of their natural range all the time. There's lots of pictures. Google it. Google right now. Take a break. Are leopard geckos found in colonies in the wild? Do leopard geckos live alone in the wild? Right? So now we're all on the same page. They live in colonies. We can all agree on that. And if you still don't believe Google, I think we all respect Arcadia. I know I certainly do. So I want to put this clip from Arcadia from 4 years ago on the Animals at Home podcast, John Courtney Smith explaining how they live in groups, and it's not really such a bad idea to keep them in groups in captivity also.
You know, but the leopard gecko, the more you study the wild forms, and there's 5 or 6 different subspecies, you know, that's developed over millions of years, all with slightly different needs and places in that ecosystem. But they are always found in groups, very rarely solitary. You know, it's a patriarchal society. You get one alpha male and a group of sort of alpha females, really, and then working in concentric circles away from that, you'll have beta females and younger males, which the alpha male will keep in check.
So the exact thing I was crucified for, the Arcadia guy, who everybody respects, as they should, said 4 years ago. So are you actually mad at the information that I put out, or are you mad because you were told to be mad? And to make sure I don't take anything out of context, the entire clip is linked in the description below, the entire thing. So I think we all agree, and part of the entire premise of the podcast, Animals at Home, which, by the way, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I love Dylan. I love this podcast. I love the guests that are on it. And I think most of you do too. The entire point of most of the episodes is how do we replicate the environment from which the animals are from in the wild, in captivity, but getting rid of the negatives. The negatives being competition, drought, famine, sickness, basically. Well, to get rid of the main thing, which is what the main argument is competition, is make sure that they're not competing over resources. So using my enclosure as an example, this is an enclosure that, say, for example, 10 years ago, by the way, everyone said 10 gallons for a leopard gecko, okay? Everyone agreed on this. Everybody agreed on this. This was not a point of contention. Nobody was fighting about it. I never saw it. Do I think that that's a great example? No. I'm just saying that things evolve. So we have to be open to new information. And when someone says to you or shows you a picture, hey, this is how they're found in the wild, why wouldn't we take that into account? We do with garter snakes. We do with other species. So how about let's look at how things are in the wild. And in captivity, you want to get rid of competition. So make sure that they have lots of feeding stations, make sure they have lots of places to hide, make sure they have ample water, make sure that the right parameters are there, make sure that they have other places to go, and not all of them are competing for even something as simple as a hotspot. In this enclosure, I accomplish all that. Do I recommend that everybody do this? No. I've been keeping leopard geckos for over 15 years. I've been keeping them together for 13 years. I think I kept saying 15, but now that I think about it, it's 13 years. I've been keeping them in cohabitation situations with no issues whatsoever. Now, does this mean that nothing could happen? Of course. Of course. Your 2 dogs you've been keeping together for 5 years could have a fight tomorrow. There's always a possibility, but you have to do your due diligence. Always do your due diligence. Make sure they're not males, they're the same size. All of these geckos are siblings, by the way. They're all separated by at most 6 weeks or 8 weeks, actually. So they're all the same size. They've been kept in the same types of enclosures. They're not fighting, they're being watched, they're in the living room, there's always somebody upstairs watching them, and I take them out every single day, especially in the first month, literally several times a day, to make sure there was no issues. So if your argument is, well, it could happen, it's a waiting game, well, how long are we waiting? It's been 15 years. And no, this isn't well, nothing's happened yet argument. Let's liken it to garter snakes again. How do we know garter snakes are okay to be kept together? Well, they are in the wild and nobody has issues. When you see in captivity leopard geckos ripping each other's arms off, it's because the care is wrong. It's because you're setting them up incorrectly. You're not doing what I'm doing. This is not a comparable situation at all. The scratching, by the way, Diamond is just going wild. He wants, I know, it's your show. I'm sorry, it's not about you today. So why do we put this myth out there in the first place that leopard geckos are solitary creatures? Well, because we have to idiot-proof things. We do, we have to, and it's a good idea, and I agree with this. Because if you are someone who is brand new to leopard geckos, I would much rather you be told, like I recommend in care guides, to keep them separate. Because if you don't know how to read a leopard gecko, if you don't understand that a size difference of 10 grams is a kind of a big deal for female leopard geckos, you might not understand how to do it properly. So it's just easier and safer to keep them together. So to make a real world example, if you are someone who got their driver's license yesterday and you're driving a 1991 Astro van with bad brakes and the posted speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour, we have to give that same posted speed limit to Max Verstappen, who makes $55 million a year driving supercars or race cars. If he's driving around in a supercar with all the skill in the world, we have to give them the same parameters because we can't say it's okay for this person to do this and this person to do this because it gets too convoluted. But in actuality, are these the same things with the same likelihoods and same risks? No, of course not. Just like someone who keeps two leopard geckos together who doesn't know what they're doing is at more of a risk of hurting those leopard geckos than someone who's been doing it for 15 years. Where are you going? Who knows how to study these animals, who knows how these animals work, putting them together in an enclosure like this. And I'm gonna go over the main gripes that people had. They don't have enough hides. They have 11 dedicated hides, never mind being able to hide in the substrate, under water bowls, and things that aren't actual hides. They don't have enough heat sources. They have 4 dedicated heat sources from underneath, and they have that, I already explained how the one works with the bricks and from above. They have UVB, they have the right substrate, they have all the right parameters, they have food stations, they have water stations. And then the issue was, oh, okay, well, there's not climbing space. Yes, there is. People, oh, well, you should put shelves. In nature, do they have shelves or do they have sticks and branches? Because although some of you have made the argument, these are desert species, they're not desert species at all. They're found in shrublands and grasslands. Even in that clip from John Courtney Smith, he explains this. So my question is to you, can you make an actual argument? Not everybody knows, well, you should know, if you need to be told, it's not worth my time, an actual argument why this enclosure doesn't work for 6 leopard geckos. An actual argument, because I haven't seen one yet. And in fact, everybody who you already respect, who has talked on the subject beforehand, has had information put out years ago, sometimes 4 years ago plus, who is echoing what I already said. Where do you think I got my information from? You think I just pulled it from the sky? Or do you think I got it from people in Pakistan who actually see these animals from my 15 years of experience and from well-respected professionals who have already done this in captivity and shown it? The issue isn't what I've done. The issue is you've never seen it before and you were told to be angry about it. So I want to say thank you to everyone who reached out. Really appreciate you guys. You can really tell when something like this happens, who's in your corner and who's not. And for everybody who abandoned, hit the unsubscribe, made public posts, I'm not mad at any of you. I get it. I truly do believe most of you actually care about the animals. And of course, the ones who are recreational outrage, which is very trendy, and I'm sure there'll be a new thing for you to be outraged about next week. It is what it is. No hate, no distaste. It's fine. Appreciate you. If you stop watching this channel, that's great because I have lots and lots of friends who also make great content and now you have more time for them. So I meant no harm to anybody, was not malicious. Those animals have 0 issues whatsoever. Not one leopard gecko has ever been hurt in my care. And all I would ask from you is just have an open mind and really think about it. In any situation, start your argument with what actually could happen, what actually might happen, and with actual evidence. Not everybody knows, I heard from this guy. What have you actually seen? With your own eyes? What actual evidence is there? And do you agree or not that we should be replicating the best circumstances in the wild, in captivity, with taking away all the negatives? Because that's exactly what I'm doing in this enclosure. Anyway, that should be a poop storm and a half. Thank you so much for watching and hitting like and subscribe. Really appreciate you guys. If you want to be part of the Patreon club, there's discounts on merch, videos early. I actually have to end this video because I have a one-on-one with one of the patrons. I'm really looking forward to that. And that's it, because I do videos once a week, twice a week. That means I'll see you in the next one.
I'm quite excited about a large-scale project that someone's setting up with a group of 1 male leopard gecko, wild type, and 5 or 6 females.